quick Quercus Assignments and Quizzes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our quick Quercus Assignments and Quizzes, getting your course ready for winter 2021. My name is Angie Capiello. I'm an Instructional Technology Support Specialist at the UTM Library, and I'm joined by Kenneth Berry, who's also an Instructional Support Specialist with me, and also on my team in the meeting are Simone, Melissa, and Shane. So we're going to go through some slides for the first part of the session, and then we're going to actually go into a live demo, and then we're going to have a question and answer period at the end. So we invite you to use the chat to post any questions that you'd like answered towards the end of the session. And as we start off, we would just love for you to put in the chat any type of assessments that you have used and that you would like to start using for the winter session, so that we can just get an idea of where you're at with Quercus. And I'd just like to also mention there are quite a bit of slides and there's quite a bit of information, but we're going to be making these slides available to you by email in a PDF after the presentation. So we might be going at a quick pace, but it contains a lot of great information and a lot of links and resources for you as well. So don't feel like if you miss something, then you'll have this resource afterwards. So I'm just going to get started. And we just have a session outline, and it is basically we're going to be comparing the assignments and quizzes tools. And we're going to be talking about tips for exams and what technical info you should be sharing with your students. We're going to look at how to create an assignment with and without Turnitin. We're going to talk about how to enable accommodations for students in Quercus. And we're also going to look at assignment groups and weighting grades. So for the quizzes and survey section, we're going to look at setting up a quiz, moderating during a quiz, setting accommodations, and we're going to look at some ways that quizzes and surveys are being used at UTM. And we're going to also talk about the student view so you can verify what students will see. So Kenneth is going to speak about assignments, and then I'm going to take over for quizzes.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I just get a thumbs up to ensure that you're hearing me properly? Okay, good. So good audio? Okay, fine. Yeah, so we're talking about the assignments tool, but let's talk about assessment briefly. And basically, you want to build that around your learning outcomes, right? Find out how the students will demonstrate how they've achieved these outcomes. And then once we have established that, then we align that and we get the best tool that we want to use. So today we'll be talking about quizzes and assignments. And these are some of the differences, the checklists that will help us to determine. If you want peer review assignment or a group assignment, then that's the assignment tool. And I know it's maybe a little confusing because we have the assignment section and the assignment tool, but that's just how Quercus names it. If you want your questions to be automatically graded or you want randomized questions and answers, then that's a quiz tool that you'll have to use to get that functionality. If you want to use Turnitin and annotate on the papers that you're submitted, so that's the assignment tool and the speed grader. So just to give you an idea that when you're choosing based on your learning outcomes, what tools to use. If the assessment has to be timed, then there are a couple of options, right? For the assignment tool, you can specify a window, but no timer. And assignment tool, there's nothing to auto submit. It doesn't auto submit to you. But the quizzes, you can specify that timer and an auto submit feature as well. And of course, in terms of getting the results, you can do a batch download for both the assignments and the quizzes as well. So with the different parameters there as we outline. And one good thing with the assignment, you can download it offline, grade it, and upload it back. So that's just a little feature comparison. Again, just to go over some tips for exams. Again, instructions, clear instructions on how to do the exams and even a test, a sample exam to do as well. And we have the student view, is very handy. When you create your assignment, just use the student view and we can demo that. for assignment or quiz, whatever it is, use the student view and how you're going to monitor your exam and provide assistance. Again, you also can ask yourself normally what would your availability be to the students, so that can also guide you as well. What are some persons that maybe have used Zoom to be available, but this is not proctoring. I want to make that very clear, just for you to be available to give assistance and how the exam will be marked. So just some tips on that, right? And again, any of these things, you contact the Argas, right? On the student point, the student side, we have information that you share with them. So information on submitting assignments and information on taking quizzes. So it's there and we'll share this slide with you. But one big point we want you to share with the students is that for high stakes activities such as quizzes and midterms and assignments, not to use the Canvas mobile app, right? Again, this is what happens if a student encounters a technical problem. We have this on our website as well, but we'll share that with you. Basically, the takeaway here, as much information that they can give us as possible will help. So as much information we can try to find out where the problem is. For example, when we ask for the operating system, the exact version number would help. For example, we know that there's some problems with Mac OS Big Sur and such like that. So as much information as possible would help us. So that's the overall, brief intro to using assignments. Now let's look at the tool itself, the actual assignments tool. So in Quercus, you have the assignment link, and under that you'll find assignments and quizzes. So the assignment is basically a Dropbox where you can upload files, media recordings, links, and URLs as well. So we'll look further into the tool. Again, planning is so very important, right? What's the goal? Instructions, we talked briefly about that. Any information regarding the deadline, any word limits. We just want to point out that, for example, in the speed grader where you can annotate a file, we want to ensure that they use recommended file types and fonts, and we'll share the slides, but there's some file types and fonts and guidelines as well. And then also regarding unauthorized or authorized aids, they should know that as well. And we recommend that you put some academic integrity reminders. So here's a sample wording that you can use. And that's recommended also in terms of planning your assignment. Next. Okay, so here's an example of an assignment, and it has very good instructions. You can see here, first of all, when it comes to your assignment design, we recommend that you speak with Argas. You can speak to Anne Gagne at Argas or any of the educational developers. And that's very important if you have any questions regarding the assignment design as well. So here's an assignment, a critical review assignment, the purpose, the grading criteria, all the things are nicely outlined. That's what we recommend. And it's part of a scaffolded assignment as well. Now, we have the option to restrict file upload, and we recommend that you use that with caution. And because this is something that's, if you restrict the file upload, then you have to explicitly state all the file extensions that you want to accept. But I'll show you more when we demo. And just some naming convention. It's best to use specific file names as well. Regarding the file limit, there is a file limit of 500 megabytes for Canvas. And if you're using Turnitin, there's a file limit of 100 megabytes. So when you're designing your assessment, try and get an idea of what you expect students to submit. Okay, so how do we get to the assignments tool? So in Quercus, you will have a link that says assignments. Once you click on that, this is an example of what you will see. So you will see, for example, there's the assignment tool, to add an assignment in the top right, plus assignment, and plus you'll see this general in Canvas, plus assignment, plus group. So you know that plus button means to add. If you have assignments already added, you see the two categories, assignments and quizzes. For example, here we have a quiz and an assignment, and this assignment we have put it, and it's a published assignment because you can see the little check mark beside it. These assignments and quiz are weighted, And you can see that each of them has 50%, comprise 50% of the total mark as well, right? Next, so if we click plus, oops, I think we skipped one too fast there, Angie. Maybe, right. So once you click the plus button to say plus assignment, so you'll be presented with a window and you have lots of options here. You put the assignment name, you can insert media, links, you can embed image. This rich content editor allows you a lot of flexibility. You can insert a math equation here as well, insert YouTube video, MS Teams. So a lot of flexibility. You can actually make that assignment introduction pretty rich as well. Then you specify the points for the assignment and the assignment group. So when you speak about assignment group refers to the grouping of the assignments is how you will assign the weighting. So you actually assign weighting to groups in Canvas, right? And we'll talk about that. And we recommend that you display the grade as points. Next. So when you are creating your assignment, if you look here, we have an assignment. And just to bring your attention to the submission type, it says online. And once you specify file upload, then you can have the opportunity, the option to specify a plagiarism review, and the one that we have enabled is Turnitin. So this is how you create a Turnitin assignment. Once you select Turnitin, you have the options. And as displayed here, those are the options that we recommend. We do not recommend that you exclude any of the anything from the similarity report. If you need to review an individual student, then you can do that. Now, when to show reports to the student, again, that depends on your pedagogical needs, right? You might want to show them immediately. You might never want to show them. So that depends on your lead, whether it's an assignment that teaches writing, whether it's just to check for plagiarism. And also, so that's fine. Yeah, so never to use to exclude the similarity reports. Good. Okay, so what next do we have? So when you're setting up your assignment, you can create group assignments. So group assignments is very good. It can teach some, practical transferable skills such as working in group, collaborative and cooperative skills, which are so important these days. And you can have feedback as part of the grade. You can have topics that are chosen by students. Group can be self-sign up as we see here. And you can create the groups prior to the assignment, or you can create the groups on the fly as we are creating the assignment as outlined here. So and when you have a group assignment, one submission by a student goes on behalf of the group, and you can assign a grade to the entire group or choose to assign grades to the individual students. Now, if you have accommodations, right? So for example, a student needs a different due date and a different begin and end date for the assignment, then you can put it here. And you can see we have the plus add button. Now I want to make it clear that when you're doing this, just plus add, and then in the top where it says assign to will change for everyone else. But do not remove everyone and put that individual student. But we'll get into that more. So I spoke briefly about weighting, right? So as I mentioned here, these are 50% of the total. So I can go on to the weight screen. Just one more, Angie. Right, so if you want to specify the weighting right beside the plus assignment button, just you have the menu. I call them the three dots. If you click on that, you specify assignment groups weight as highlighted, and you'll be presented with another screen. And this screen here, once you check the little box beside weight final grades, then you get the option. So once you have created your groups, then you can specify here the weighting for the groups. And as you see, we have two groups, assignments and quizzes, each worth 50%. Now, if you want to assign, so in Canvas, you cannot really assign weighting to an individual piece of assessment. If you have one piece of assessment that you need to assign a weighting to, you have to put it in its own group, right? So that's how it goes. And so Angie will take over and speak about quizzes, and then I'll jump back in and do a live demo if we have any questions. But any questions on assignments before we jump into quizzes? Angie, if you don't mind.
Go ahead. Yep.
Are we all good? Thumbs up if we're all good so far.
Okay. Looks like everybody's good. And again, if you have questions at the end, we're happy to take them if you think of them on the way.
Good.
So we're going to dive now into quiz tools in Quercus. So quizzes can be used for online surveys or that have question types, short answer, and they can also be graded. So talking about how instructors are using Quercus quizzes as surveys, they're using them to take votes to change the syllabus, as a midterm check-in with students, as a way to turn off anonymity for surveys and for subtle research. You can also use quizzes for a pre-tutorial quiz, a syllabus review test, academic integrity test, midterm survey. You can use it for have students submit video introductions, self-check, and as final assessments. So planning your Quercus quiz. So you want to provide as much instruction as possible. So the goal, instructions, information about deadlines, how many questions will be there and how much time they should allot for them. If there are any word limits, formatting requirements, what's allowed in terms of aids. So is it open book? Are they allowed to go to another browser? And then also there's an academic integrity reminder that you can put in as a first question or as a separate assessment module that they would step through. And we're always happy to help you with setting that up. So just looking at a sample term test instructions here, we're letting them know what to do if they lose internet connectivity, which browser they should use, what happens if they have questions during the quiz or test, and what would happen in terms of late submission, so they have a good idea beforehand what the expectations are, and letting them know basically what could happen if they leave the quiz screen, and basically can they petition to rewrite it or not. And that was an example from Barb Merck and Monica Havelka for EMV 100. And in their example as well, they've given specific instructions that break down the term test in its parts. And then also let them know how students should manage their time. As we look at quizzes, we'll see that quizzes can be set to be completed in a certain time, whereas assignments cannot. So looking at quizzes in Quercus here, we have an example, and you'll see it's just very similar to assignments in the way you set it up, the big blue button there, and you can see if something's published by the green check mark. And students will see this if you verify in Student View as well when it's due. And so we have two quiz engines in Quercus, classic quizzes and new quizzes. We recommend that you use classic quizzes and not new quizzes for many reasons, and most importantly because there are some issues with new quizzes, including the reporting that's available afterwards. So just some links there as well about new quizzes as it may become more in use next year. So this is looking at creating a quiz. You have the same rich content editor available that can discuss, so you can insert all the same content. And on the right, you have your content selector if you want to pop a link into the description or add a file or an image. Now, when you choose a quiz, you have the 4 options. The graded quiz is what is typically used, and you also have a practice quiz. So the practice quiz will not appear in the grade book. So that's what you want to consider. And you have graded surveys and ungraded surveys, and they also don't appear in the grade book, but rather have a quiz analysis file that could be downloaded later as a CSV file. And now you have your assignment groups there, and basically it's the weighted groups that Ken was discussing. So you can choose one there if you've already created them, or you can create one afterwards that you move the quiz into. So let's look at the options for quizzes. So you can shuffle the answers, and this pertains to multiple choice questions so that every student would have a different randomized order for the multiple choice options. So you have a time limit as well. These are some other options. Are you going to allow multiple attempts? And if so, which attempts are you going to keep and how many? And are you going to let students see their quiz responses? So this is important if you want to keep it unchecked if you don't want students to see their quiz responses, or if you don't want students to see the quiz questions. It depends on the assessment. And then you have your show one question at a time and lock questions after answering. And are you going to require an access code? So just like assignments, you can add accommodations. So by default, it will be assigned to everyone, and you can put in the due date and the available from and until date. And the available from and until is the time that students can actually take the quiz. And the due date lets you know whether it was late or not. And the due date also is the way that the Quercus calendar receives an event in the Quercus calendar. Otherwise, it'll appear undated on the right-hand side. You can add an additional box if a student has an accommodation. You can find their name and give them their own set of dates, and it will automatically change the first box into everyone else. And just keep in mind, if you are, we'll talk about later about moderating quizzes, about the available from until time, because the moderating quiz setting has to fall within the available from and until time. So we have a link to instructions for more details on setting up accommodations, but now we're going to talk about moderating quiz. So when you click on a quiz, you actually have some options on the right, and one of them is moderate this quiz. And it's a great feature that you really is a good idea to take advantage of, because it lets you see all the students in your course, how many attempts they've made, how long it took them to finish, and attempts left, what their score is. And then you can also give them an extra attempt or extra time. And you just have to, again, make sure that that time fits within the available from and until dates that you've already set. And of course, this time would be confirmed by accessibility services. Now talk about questions. So there's a few ways that you can add questions to your quiz. You can create a new question. And if you just create question by question in your quiz, they will all appear in the same order that you created them. And then they will automatically be added to a question bank called unfiled questions. You can create a question group that allows you to randomize the questions and link them to a question bank. And then you can use find questions, where you can find and pick and choose from different question banks, and you can use previously created questions. Now I'm just going to click on here. So moderating again a quiz real time. You can look at that, but it has to be done like before or after the student has started, because if you moderate while they're taking the quiz, it won't, the change won't take effect until they're finished. Okay. And so again, we strongly recommend that you use Student View to check your quiz, especially if you're using images in your quiz questions or math equations. You want to ensure that they're appearing correctly. And you just go to settings and Student View, and you can review items, and then you just leave Student View on the bottom. Now you can also use Preview this quiz, which we'll look at. So again, there are measures that we want you to consider to support academic integrity. So we have some links there in terms of Canvas, how to maximize security. We recommend using question groups to randomize your quiz questions. And we'll look at that a little bit further, because there are some other details you need to know. Shuffling answers, of course, you want to make sure that if you're going to shuffle answers, they don't have an A, B, or C in front of them, because it won't make sense when they're shuffled. We recommend a time limit. You want to think about how much time each student would need per question, and then multiply that by the number of questions. Now, we recommend one attempt and not letting students see their quiz responses unless it's a formative assessment, and that's the purpose. And we also recommend show one question at a time, but with caution, because with lock questions after answering, if you use lock questions after answering and then preview the quiz, which we recommend, it may lock the quiz for you and cause problems. You could require an access code if you wanted to. And then again, you can limit the availability window. So it depends how tight you want to make this available. Is it going to be available for the exact time of the quiz, or are you going to allow some buffer time in case there's technical issues? Or are you going to consider students that are abroad and give something over multiple days? So it's on a case-by-case situation. And of course, you want to make sure that the grades are muted beforehand in your grade book by going to the grade posting policy and making sure it's set to manual. And in the winter semester, it'll default now, thank goodness, to manual, so you won't have to worry about that. But until we're there, you'll just need to make sure, because what will happen is if there's a mix of manually graded questions and automatically graded questions, the students will get an inaccurate grade before you finish grading, and it could cause a lot of headaches. Now, if you're going to embed quiz images, you want to make sure that the file section is set to restricted as well, just in case you have any documents and files that students can have access to. So in the chat, if you have any questions about Quercus tools, we're happy to take them, assignments or quizzes. We're going to talk a little bit more about question banks as well. And we are providing in the PowerPoint links on what to do when students are taking a quiz. You can share these links. They can submit a ticket through the instructional portal, and problems with Quercus or problems with CrowdMark. And now question groups. Let's look at creating a question. So we have 12 question types. You want to indicate the points for the question. Typically, most common ones, multiple choice, true, false. And if you use the new question method, you can regrade these if there is an issue later. Now, it's possible to embed video links if you're using My Media or if you have a YouTube video. And you will need to indicate which answers are correct and which are incorrect, as you see below. And you could also have a no, like a text no question, which could just have information for students. It's really useful. So when creating a multiple choice question, it's very important that you make sure the green arrow is next to the correct answer. And you want to then, if you're not randomizing, you want to ensure that you're shuffling the answers as good practice. And then you would give the incorrect answers for the other options, and you can add or edit those options with the trash can there. You can delete them or add another answer depending on how many you have. So managing question banks. So you can actually organize your questions into categories for either topics or specific tests. If you have term test 1, you can have a question bank called term test 1 and have the questions there. And you can see here is an example of different question banks. You can add another one. And it's a little bit tricky when you add a question bank. You want to hit enter after you enter the bank name to make it stick. So we see here we have course evaluation has 12 questions. We have a few other banks there. And by default, they're bookmarked so that you can access them in other courses. But if you want to unbookmark it, you would just click on the little flag there. So let's look at a new question group. So this is for randomization. So here we're creating a question group. We're telling it how many questions to pick and how many points each question is worth. So you may have a question bank with 12 questions and you want the question group to contain all 12 questions. So you would say pick 12 questions, give 1 point per question. Or maybe you have 12 questions and you only want 10 of the questions to be so that there's a couple left out during each randomization. So you would create the group, give it a name, and then you can link to the question bank that you've already created. And here you can choose your question bank. And keep in mind that the quiz regrade does not apply to questions linked to a question bank, because questions may be used in more than one quiz. So basically, when you're creating a quiz, it's creating a copy of the quiz, which is one instance, and it cannot be altered afterwards. So here we see we've link this to midterm essay questions, and it's letting you know, it's confirming, and you want to make sure you hit the create group button or it will not save what you've just created here in your group. Now we also have find questions method. So here you would actually click on find questions and then select your question bank, and you can actually select individual questions in that question bank. And correct me if I'm wrong, Simone, this is the preferred way to create and use question banks so that it's easier to regrade if you need to afterwards. So here it also allows you to create a new question group, and it's the same options there as well. And then you click on add questions, and you'll see them all appearing together. And you can actually move them around in different orders by clicking on the 8 dots there on the left if you need to reorder them. And at this point, you can click save in the quiz. And if you need to change, you can click on the pencil there and you can set how many questions it's choosing out of this set. So additional notes, you will not be able to see question details and question banks that have more than 50 questions. So that's something to note. And because there's a little check mark in the question banks that says show question details, which actually will give you the full questions with the multiple choice or true false options, which is very helpful when you're reviewing your quiz beforehand. Some reports have been made of duplicate questions being created when editing questions in a question bank. That has been associated using the find questions method, so just be aware of that. And if you have more than 50 questions, you'll need to select more questions when using the find questions method. So let's see here, we're adding a question to a bank. This is just showing you how to add a question to a bank. And so just looking at the different types of quizzes here, just as a review now of everything we've learned, we have graded quiz, practice quiz, graded survey, and ungraded survey. And this chart just lets you know whether a grade's assigned, whether it appears in gradebook, are the responses anonymous, what reports are available in terms of the items or the students. And we're just letting you know that to click fully anonymous survey responses, you may want to use a third-party survey tool, but we're happy to speak with you about that. And just send us an email if you have any questions about that. Okay, so just as a quick look at workflow options for assignments. So basically, just to give you a process that you can look at, you can download the assignments, grade them, and then upload them back is one option. Another option is to grade the assignments in SpeedGrader, and you can actually provide inline annotations. And they can be written, audio, video. You can attach comments or a rubric that you created. But you just have to remember that if you want a record of this, you will have to download each annotated file one by one. And any video audio file should be very, very short. So option 3 is grade an assignment with a rubric. Excellent method. You can provide standardized feedback. It makes grading a lot easier, but it needs to be created in advance. And rubrics only work with assignments. Some more considerations. If you have multiple graders, you want to schedule the grading dates and times and divide up the assignments or the questions if there's manual grading required. You can also restrict TA's access to a section. Now, ideally, this is done when you add the TA because you can choose the section and there's a section to limit them to an option, or you can talk to us about how you change them afterwards because there's a few steps involved. Now, late policies, there is a late policy tool and it will be applied to all assessments and the full value of the assignment. And that's accessible in the gradebook in the gear icon. And course data and reports, there's some links there letting you know how to access some data. Okay, and turnitin.com is integrated with Quercus. And we have some more information here for you. So just some considerations and workflows for quizzes. So If you have questions that are automatically graded, we have some tips there about question banks. And then some considerations for you in terms of reporting. So I'll just, this information's all on the slideshow if you need it. And option 2, questions being manually graded in SpeedGrader. You can grade them question by question. Or question 3, they're manually graded or downloaded for offline grading. So talking about quizzes as well, with rubrics, you can't use them to grade quizzes. You can use them to provide feedback, but not by individual question. And it is recommended that you turn off the point values so there are no issues with the totaling of the grades. And you can hide the rubric. Here are some links on some more data that you can access afterwards. So some additional considerations on quizzes. When you create a graded quiz, a grade column is automatically created. If you need the names of the individual students, you're looking to have a graded quiz. And you want to include an initial academic integrity. It could be multiple choice or true or false, and you want to make that out of 0. And you want to make sure questions are finalized, of course, and use the preview function to test them. And only certain types of questions, keep in mind, can be regraded. And that's multiple choice, true, false, or multiple answers. Because it will, quiz regrade does not apply to questions linked to a question bank. So that's something you need to keep in mind. And you don't want to change the quiz in any way because it can cause issues. You may have to regrade the entire group of students. So you don't want to change the quiz afterwards or delete any questions. It can be very problematic. And we want to reinforce that students do not use the mobile app to submit any assignments or take quizzes, or their phone browser in any way. Okay, this is just a quick look at quiz summary. So basically, these are some of the reporting reports that you can access. And this is just letting you know some of the standard deviation, median, average score information, and actually gives you breakdown per question with a discrimination index. So we talked about the bookmark feature, so you can access your question banks in any course. And some information about bookmarking. Okay. You can align any outcome in your course to question banks if you're using the outcomes feature, but again, we can talk to you about that because there's a link here for more information on course outcomes and learning mastery. And if you have questions regarding, feel free to contact us. This is our email address. So that concludes, thanks for your patience, a lot of information about quizzes. And at this point, we just would like to go into the live demo, and also we're still happy to have any or answer any questions as well.
So again, so I'm just going to briefly walk through setting up an assignment. So if we click on the assignments link, and here I have 3 assignments already. So I want to create a new assignment. I just click plus assignment. I can give the assignment a name. And here's the rich content editor. As you know, as I said, we have different options. We can add some equation using LaTeX as well. We can add links, right? We can add images. So just this is the description. So this, if I learn how to spell, that would be nice. All right. So, and then you can put descriptions here. If you're going to do much typing, then it's good to click the accessibility checker just to make sure. And if you want to get fancy, you can make HTML code as well. So very important to specify the points that the assignment is marked out of, right? We recommend that you use points and not percentage. So leave the display as points, right? So we could say this is marked out of 20 points. You can specify whether or not this is marked count towards the final grade. So for the submission types, we have 4 main submission types. And basically anything in the grade book has to be tied to an assignment. So even if you just want a column to make, for example, grades, right? I think we have a question there for participation grades, then it has to be a column. You can specify no submission if it's just for participation grades, right? If it's a on paper assignment, you specify on paper. External tool, for example, if you're using like Peer Scholar or such, but we're going to focus on the online assessment. So we can have text, website, media recording, or file uploads. But I just want you to pay attention. Once you click file uploads, then you get the plagiarism review option as well. So this is where the student is expected to upload a file, whether it be a Word or a PDF document, right? And you can specify how many attempts. So by default, it's unlimited, but you could choose one, if it's 1 or 2 attempts. And then you say, okay, we want to use Turnitin. And it does this thing, brings up the options. And then we recommend that you just exclude this. And if you want to make it easy, you can click Save Default Settings. So whenever you create an assignment, it remembers this. So again, you can specify when do you want to show your results to the students, or if you choose not, or whatever, dependent again on your pedagogical needs, right? We could specify if this is a group assignment. Once I click this, I have the opportunity to create a group set at this point in time. I can specify self sign up, or I could create the groups on the fly. So there's the options. Again, planning your assignment, what are the options? What are the instructional goals if you want to use groups for, so then once you determine that, then you can specify the groups as well. Or you could say, I'll create the groups later. All right, and you can assign a group leader. A group leader can change the name of the groups as well. I'll probably just uncheck that. Moderated grading. We don't really recommend moderated grading at this point in time, but the moderator can review multiple independent grades, so you can have multiple persons grading. You can also enable anonymous grading as well. But here for the accommodations, I just want to bring to your attention again, by default, it's assigned to everyone. But if, for example, if we had a student, for example, this is one of our test accounts. So we said this student needs a different due date. Now, as you can see, it changes now to everyone else, right? So they could have a due date of December 18th, right? And then this student will have a due date of December 25th, right? And then you can specify the availability time. So the available from is when the assignment is available to the students, available until once that date is reached, they cannot submit the assignment anymore, right? And you can add as many as you want, and you can save and publish. Now, once the assignment has been saved, so save and you see the assignment is published, then this is where we recommend that you go to, for example, just go home and go to the student view to test your assignments. So here you're mimicking a student, and you click on assignments, and we see here, this is paper 2, and we're going to say submit. So this is what the students see, right? So this is how you test your assignment. And of course, the student has to agree to the terms, and we can browse an assignment, and we could get a file upload. So I've chosen a file, and I choose submit assignment. So here the students, this is like their assignment receipt. They can see submitted at this point in time, or they could resubmit an assignment as many times as you allow them. So once you do that, you can leave student view, right? And in your assignments, you will realize that here I have due date for everyone else. I didn't specify the until date, and then that one student gets that thing. Here I can see I have 1 submissions, obviously submitted, and none have been graded. I can download the submissions if I wish. So if I want to grade this, I could go to Speed Grader. And here we have the assignment. So this is the assignment that has been original work by the student, very well done. And you can annotate on the you can highlight if you want. You could type, good job, right? And then you can put in the assignment, says well done, right? And then you can give this grade 20 out of 20 for originality. And Yeah, so that's the assignment. So that's the beauty about the speed grader. So you can annotate, and then you can also download the annotated copy. Now you can bulk download the assignments, but you won't get the annotated copies, right? And once you put your comments, you have to click submit. It will save it in the draft, but submit, and then it's sent to the students. So that's that. So your comment has been submitted, and here we can go back to our assignment. So if I click here, I go to the grade book, and then you can see also for the assignment paper 2, that is. So because I've enabled Turnitin, you will have your different colors here indicating match. Remember, Turnitin just indicates similarity, not plagiarism. You, the instructor, will have to determine that. Based on your assignment, some may have higher matches generally than some, but that's you. This will be red, yellow, or green, depend on like this is red here. This is training 78 needs to do a lot better, but this is red, some very serious matching happening here, right? So that's your assignment. So if I should go back, so let's see, what does the student see? I should go back home, and then I should go back to student view. So this is our student. If I go to assignments, you can see I have a grade as well. If I go to paper 2 and I click on it, so this is here. I can see it here, grade 20 points, graded anonymous, no. This is second assignment. So let me click on my grade. So I see for paper 2, and I click here. So the students go to paper 2, they click here, and they can see the comments as well, and they see their grades, right? So that's basically the rundown of setting up your assignments as well. You set it up, you test it with student view, and you can leave student view. And if you need to reset, and this go for quiz as well, if you need to reset the student, that means that it removes all the submissions that you have made so that you can start afresh, right? Um, so that's for assignments, a quick demo. I think that's it. Angie, I don't missing anything?
Okay,
Oh,
yeah, and I'll take over now for quizzes. Okay, so I'm in my Quercus course here. Sorry, this view is in the way. And I'm just going to go to the quizzes tool. You see here, I already have a final exam quiz set up. But if I wanted to create a new quiz, I would click on the plus quiz button. So let's just take a look at this one that I already have set up. And we'll look at the settings here. So I've given it a name, Final Quiz. It's not published, so I can still edit this. And I can put quiz instructions, and I can choose the type of quiz. I'm going to make it a graded quiz, and I can put it in an assignment group as well. Now I have the shuffle answers option on. I've given 35-minute time limit. I have not allowed multiple attempts, and I'm not letting students see their responses. But if I wanted them to, there are some options there. And I'm going to have them see one question at a time, but I'm not going to lock it. So they can go back to the questions. And this is going to be assigned to everyone, due on the 11th and available from the 10th to the 13th for this particular situation. Now I'm going to pop over to the questions. So I've got a few questions already added here. And let's just take a quick look at adding another question. So I can add a new question. And say I were to add a multiple choice question, I would put the question here. What is and then you could have different options here. Of course, pizza. Whatever. And of course, there's no right answer, but in this case, if we had a right answer, I had an extra question here, I'm going to delete it. And if I were to change the option, the green arrow tells me which one is correct. And I want to click. And if I wanted to give feedback for that question, I can say correct or whatever feedback you'd like to give. So it's a very handy tool. You can give feedback for questions and also for the entire or for different answers. and you can give feedback for the entire question. But it's important here to not lose this question. You need to click update question or it won't be added. So that's just basically how you add a question. I've made that out of 1 point, but if I needed to edit that, I would just click the little pencil and I'd be able to edit that. Say if I wanted to make that worth 3 points for some reason. Update question. So if you were to add another question group, I would click on question group and I would call this term test group. And then I would link to a question bank. And here I have the question banks that I have access to. They have this one. I would say select bank. And I would just say pick 3 questions, 1 point per question, and I click create the group. So this is telling me that it's set to pick more questions than are available. So of course you want to make sure that you don't do that. Now the find questions is recommended. So I would say that I want to, these are groups already created, or I can create a new group. I can just call this final group or whatever you want to call it. And I would just say pick 3 questions and I get 1 point per question, create the group. And now I can add the questions to it. Here, and I can link that to a question bank. And just click update the group. And now I can click save. So now I can see my quiz here. It gives me a summary and students will see the same summary. If it's ready, I can publish this. And as students take the quiz, and I can also preview it. So if I were to preview this quiz now, I click on preview. And it will take me question by question of what students would see. So I choose a question, click next, and you'll see at the bottom that it's auto saving. As I change my options, it's going to keep saving. So if the student were to lose connectivity or to leave the page, they would be able to resume where they left off and it would save their question. Now the students can also jump around to different questions if these questions aren't locked. This is another example here. And when I was done, I would submit the quiz and it would give me a notice here. So let's just take a quick look at how to moderate the quiz. So I don't have any students that have taken it. Oh, we do have some examples from another day. So this is, no one's taken the course yet, but it shows you all your students and what attempts they have left. And if you want to give them extra time, you would click the pencil and you would say this student gets 1 extra attempt, or if they're getting 15% more time, you would give them whatever number that is, 10%, 10 minutes, 8 minutes extra on every attempt, and say save. So it's very useful, especially as the quiz starts, just to keep an eye on how students are doing. Also want to take a look at the question banks as well. So you access them at quizzes, and if you click on the vertical menu, you get the question banks. And here are the question banks that I've created for this course. And you see I have unfiled questions here and my exam questions. It's really easy to create a bank. Just click add question bank and just give it a name, term test 2. Here are your questions, and then you can add a question, or you can click on the question bank and then click add a question, and you can start to build up your question banks. And just a quick look, I want to just jump over to the gradebook quickly. So we're looking at the gradebook here, and a couple things that we mentioned during the slides, I just want to show you. So if you need to verify that your quiz or assessment is set to the manual grade posting policy, you would click on the gear and you click on grade posting policy, and you just want to make sure it's set to manually post grades. And what that does is that allows you to control how the grades are posted. And you'll see with the visibility icon that I have some grades that need to be posted. I click on the 3 dots. I would just click post grades. And it's asking you to post them to everyone or just who is graded. I will click to everyone and click post. And the visibility icon disappears. And again, in the winter, you won't have to worry about that unless you wanted to change the posting policy. You can also set an individual posting policy for a specific assignment by clicking on the vertical menu and then grade posting policy. So say you have some assessments where you want the grades to be automatically posted, but you have some that you want them to be manually. This will override the grade posting policy and I'll set this one to automatically. And we also, I want you to see the gradebook history here. So as we're grading, you can actually see how grades have changed for different assessments, and you can actually search under artifact for any assessment. It will pull it up and just see the gradebook history, so if the grades have been changed. It's a great feature. A couple more things about grades. Of course, if you're working online, you want to download your gradebook, and you need to do this regularly for your records, especially at the end of term. I'm going to click on Actions, Export, and then when you're finished grading, you would click on Import to re-import the grades. Okay, and of course I don't have any student submissions in my example, but I want to let you know how you can see the student logs. So basically we want to see if students, how much time they spent on a question, whether they left the browser, left the screen. You would click on your quiz, you click on the vertical menu, and where it says show student quiz results, I just don't have any, but if I did, you would click on the student, it would be hyperlinked on the left, and there would be a big link that says quiz logs, and that will give you some more information in terms of the student's actual attempts.
Have questions or need help? Contact us. Instructional support on the UTM service portal. Email us utml.instructtech@utoronto.ca or phone us at 905-601-8859.